Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome to our podcast.
Here we are in the Mercus studio. Yeah? No, not really.
Doesn't matter where we are. We're on the internet. That's what matters.
And we're here to bring... What are we here to do, actually?
Just to waste time.
No, to make time.
I think we're here to create content that's compelling, that people want to watch, and at the same time gives over certain Torah ideas so that people can become more alive than they currently are.
Interesting theory. Yeah, that's a good hypothesis of what we're here to do.
That's my goal.
I hear.
What's your goal?
Well, there's a teaching. It says when the Baal Shem Tov went up to the heavens one time, he says he asked Moshiach, when are you coming? It's kind of like delayed, a long time. He said, the Moshiach quoted a verse from the book of Proverbs from King Solomon. It says, when your wellsprings spread out, it's outwards. The wellspring is the source of water. The teachings of Chassidus, not only the water, but the source of water is spread out to the first levels, and that's when Moshiach comes. So all we have to do is you get Chassidus to go viral, and then that's it. No other issues in the world.
There's so many questions I have on what you just said.
Well, maybe we should start with the one question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can ask a question.
One at a time. Yeah.
Well, first of all, what do you mean he went up to heaven?
It's a letter that the Baal Shem Tov writes, which is published in Kesser Shem Tov, a book of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, published by Kahat. He said in a specific year, I forgot the exact year, but on Rosh Hashanah, says he had like a spiritual experience. He was in this world physically, but it's like his mind went up to heaven, and then
that's cool.
It's a very long letter about the things he saw in the heaven. He saw like a lot of different things, and then Moshiach is like kind of at the end of the letter after all the things he saw. And he says this conversation he had with Moshiach.
What are some of the other things he saw when he was floating in heaven?
After review of the letter, but it talks about he saw like different souls.
Things forgiven, no?
I think, yeah, you read it?
Sure. Everyone knows about it. You can read it.
Yeah, understanding is a different issue.
Understanding takes time, because what does it mean to go into heaven? And what does it mean to meet the soul of Moshiach? And what does it mean to have a conversation in heaven? Like, is he actually having a conversation? Yeah. Or is he just understanding something while he's in that state, and that's as if he's having a conversation? Like, is he the soul of Moshiach, and then he's having a conversation with himself? Because Moshiach tells him to spread his own teachings, which is kind of convenient.
But did he even have any teachings at the point? Because this is printed at the beginning of the book of teachings, which implies that he didn't have any.
Had teachings.
What teachings did he have? Yeah.
He's been developing a philosophy, no?
Before that time?
I'm assuming he knew how to get to heaven, so that has
that's
to
something.
Be
I don't know.
Because doesn't he write in the letter, I got to heaven using that technique we both know about?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but
isn't
maybe.
that part of the letter?
I remember. I think in that letter he says something about like. I think the explanation of the letter says Moshiach told him that when the rest of the world is able to make different divine unifications of Hashem's name, just like you are, then Moshiach will come. I'm pretty sure that's what it said at the end of the letter.
That's another can of worms right there. It wasn't meant to make inclusion.
Unifications of different letters, Hebrew letters, and different energies. I don't even know. I mean, apparently we know. Right. Apparently we do it, but we don't.
And what happens when Moshiach comes? Like, why? Like, that's just so that nobody has to be poor anymore, because he's from like a small poor village and people are getting sick. What?
Who's getting sick?
People in his village.
Whose village?
The Baal Shem Tov's village.
Baal Shem Tov's
village. What? Like, what's the point of this letter? What? I don't get it.
The point of the letter was I think he said in the letter he wasn't allowed to publish it. I think, right? He said like he wasn't supposed to publish it, but then something happened and he did publish it.
Didn't he write this letter to his brother?
I don't even know. Who did he write it to?
I think he's writing it to his brother in Eretz Yisrael in the Holy Land.
Did he intend it to be published to the masses?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I think that's what gives the letter so much credibility. It's just like this personal letter between these brother-in-laws or brother-in-laws that are so close to each other, and they have like a shared language spiritually. Because I think he mentions in the beginning of the letter, like, I went up using that thing that you know about.
I don't remember that. That's
so if I ever tell you like, hey, Yaakov, I went up to heaven using that thing you know about, then you know, like,
I don't know if I would know what you're saying. I might pretend that I
Well, clearly his brother-in-law knew.
Yeah, I guess that's what.
Okay, cool. So now fast forward, it's a few hundred years later.
Yeah.
And
we're working on it.
Okay, so that's still like the purpose of all of this, to spread.
Yeah.
But it's not really the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, it's the Chabad teachings.
No, that's the thing, that the main idea of the Baal Shem Tov teachings is expressed in Chabad. Chabad means wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So it's a way that's understood through like analogies and more explanation. I mean, the Alter Rebbe was like the main like offshoot of the Baal Shem Tov's students. I mean, the Baal Shem Tov had the Maggid of Mezhybizh as his main student. And the Maggid of Medzhybizh had the Alter Rebbe as his main student.
Wasn't Mendel of Vitebsk also the
There was a lot of
Rebbe?
Who's Rebbe?
The Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad's Rebbe.
Maybe
for like
he
a
also.
short period of time. Like when he went to visit the Vilna Gaon, wasn't he with Menachem of Vitebsk?
There was a time when the Alter Rebbe was deciding, before he learned about Chassidus, he already like learned like the whole Talmud and like a lot of other stuff at a very young age, and then he was deciding we should like settle in Vilna, which was more like Talmudic centered, and then, or he heard about the Maggid of Medzhybizh's area, which was they were more focused on learning about how to daven. And he said, oh, he already knows a lot of Torah, but he doesn't really know how to daven. So I'm not sure. Maybe with Mendel Vitebsk, that was. I did read the book, but I was younger.
It's okay. We can fast forward. Okay, so now we're in Chabad land, and we're teaching Chabad Hasidus, which is the teachings of the Chabad leaders, and that's supposed to. Well, it's not so much on Yechudim.
Well, that is
these unifications.
That makes unification. I mean, just learning it makes unifications.
Okay,
I guess.
What does that mean?
I don't even know what it means, but it means something. I know that we're doing it. What it actually means is another issue.
I'm going to go on a half-hour tangent right now. I'm not. We were talking earlier that we published some things online, and we were excited to just get knowledge and information out there that we just wanted to talk at the camera of different ideas. So now we're trying to keep it more conversational.
Yeah, hopefully. So far. I guess they're still watching now, probably, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's the idea, yeah.
Just talk.
People don't actually care what you're talking about as long as you're talking.
Forth, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. Like 20 minutes, then 20
minutes. Well,
that's pretty hard.
Okay, fine. So the idea, I think one idea of the unifications, and I've heard people say this more explicitly, because even though it is convenient for Chabad to think of itself as the main offshoot of the Baal Shem Tov, and
it's convenient because it's true, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm not going to disagree with that.
We can talk about that later.
But there are other people that see themselves as the legitimate offshoot, or the Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who's his grandchild, as an offshoot. So there are different opinions, and I'm not trying to, I think that the whole point of Yechudim, these unifications that are what's going to bring Moshiach, is when we see the unity in everything. We see the shalom in everything. Speaking of Menachem Vitebsk,
yeah, actually, I haven't really heard of him that much before you mentioned him, but it
he's
sounds like
fantastic.
a good guy.
You should. It's only 2 small books. You should read them. They're
what are they called? Free Fruit of the Land. Interesting.
Yeah, he moved to Eretz Yisrael, and the way I heard it growing up was he was the Rebbe of that area, because the Maggid kind of set people to be in charge of different areas.
Yeah, all his students were like Rebbes, right?
Yeah. So it seemed like they had this great period.
Mendel Vitebsk was a student of the Maggid, or no? Or
I'm sure.
I mean, sure.
I think so. Yeah, I'm very confident that he was.
That means that he was probably the Alter Rebbe's contemporary, because they were both students.
Contemporary, because the Alter Rebbe was very young. The Alter Rebbe was maybe even the youngest student.
I think he was, but he was considered the main student. According to the Maggid, yeah.
According to the Maggid.
I mean, according to the books that Chabad writes about him.
Anyhow, the point that I'm saying is that in this week he writes. I personally, because my name is Menachem, I have an affinity for people named Menachem. I don't know what it is.
Interesting.
And he also is just fantastic. You read about his life. He's very cool. He moved to Eretz Yisrael. He didn't want anything from anyone. He just, I don't know. He's cool.
Does Alter Rebbe write about him in Tanya? That's someone else.
Yeah, he has a haskama from him, and they have a lot of letters back and forth.
In the Tanya, printed in the Tanya, or different?
Very possibly in the Tanya. Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Interesting.
You know the famous story where the Alter Rebbe went to the Vilna Gaon, and then the Vilna Gaon ran away.
I heard about that. I don't know all the details. Do you know about that?
I can a little bit, but Menachem Vitebsk went with him.
With him, interesting.
Yeah,
what was that story about?
It's a long story, and this is
only 20 minutes at a time.
No, I'm saying it's a long story. Not that I want to say the whole story. I'm saying that this goes on the internet, and then everybody watches it, and some people are constantly in a mode of peacemaking, and some people always like to find something that they can attack on and argue. So the whole like Geula redemption mode of being is not interested in arguing and fighting. So that's why it's like, I don't even know if I want to go here, because
what is the story about fighting? Because
because you're bringing up the Vilna Gaon, and then there's the Litvish movement and the Yeshivish movement and the Chabad Hasidic movement, and I mean it's like a famous tear in the fabric of quote unquote ultra orthodoxy, even though 80 to 90% of Jews aren't affiliated to either of these camps, because that was when the Enlightenment was starting, the following generation, the Endarkment.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so yeah. But I was doing some research on it. I mean, in the end of the day, when you get up to like the higher levels of, I don't want to say higher levels, but the more pneumius of the pneumius, like what we were talking
Inner
about
levels.
in our long form.
Which people may or may not have seen.
Yeah, you should go watch it.
Even though it's probably impossible to watch.
Yeah, it's difficult, but you can do it. We believe in you.
Well, probably one of the most difficult things in the world.
Yeah, well, it's like opening a Zohar for the first time and just reading it straight through. You gotta.
Not even. Yeah.
It's written. It's like opening an English translation of Zohar written by people that don't know the Zohar. I'm joking. So that's.
What was the story? It's like very short.
The short version of the story is. I'm gonna try to give an objective because there's each side has their own version of it. But the short story of the short story of the version, yeah. The short story of the version is that Torah Judaism was practiced one way, where like not everybody needed to know everything or get honor. You kind of just did your thing, and then you gave a lot of honor and respect to the sages. And some of those positions were also bought, like these community leaders who were also the Talmidei Chachamim, the scholars. Some of those positions were actually paid for. Like, for example, the Vilna Gaon didn't have a public position. He was kind of this recluse that just stayed in he didn't even have that many students. And then his works weren't even published until like 35 years after his death. And then there was different students that came out, like Menachem Mavshklov, and then Chaim Volozhin that started the famous Volozhin Yeshiva. So there were like these different students, and then Chaim Volozhin ended up becoming considered the main student of the Vilna Gaon. Even though at first that wasn't quite sure what it is. And I was just reading on the Cuts blog, which is a fantastic blog, that the Chaim, and he was quoting someone else, the Chaim of Volozhin basically said, like, at first he made as if the Vilna Gaon wasn't so into Kabbalah. Like, he was into the theoretical parts of Kabbalah, but not into, like, the actual experiential, mystical, life-changing aspects of Kabbalah. And then later on, according to this scholar, he changed the narrative, like, to compete with the Hasidic movement. But the Chaim Volozhin made a very popular yeshiva, and then he accepted Hasidic students. So there's this whole long history and chapter.
So when did the Alter visit the Vilna Gaon?
So officially, like, he was put in Cherem. The Baal Shem Tov already was put in Cherem because they were afraid that he was like another Shapsei Tzvi, like another messianic movement that was going to devastate the Jewish people.
The Baal Shem Tov was alive at the same time as the Alter? Only 3 years?
The Vilna Gaon, yeah.
Oh, this was
but the Vilna Gaon is much older.
Oh.
So he, I think, already put the Baal Shem Tov in Cherem.
At an earlier time.
Yeah, and then later on, I think I don't know the exact details. It's not something that I focus on too much.
Yeah. What happened when the Alter Rebbe visited him?
So then the story goes that the Alter Rebbe, along with Menachem Vitebsk, which people don't really know about, went to go visit to try to make peace. Like he said, if we would get together, then we could, he could explain him, or we could figure out the differences. And the story goes that he jumped out the window, or
the Vilna Gaon
ran away. Yeah, and he said like he didn't want to connect with him. There's like a current Mikubal in Eretz Yisrael, and other people have said this too, that like if they would have met, Mashiach would have come. There's always stories like this.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyhow, where we are today is that we have a whole lineage of 7 generations of teachers.
Yeah.
Lots of their work, I would say, a majority of their work stems from the first Rebbe, this person who we're talking about, this tzaddik, this holy person that we're talking about, his writings.
Who got it from the Baal Shem Tov? I mean, his elaboration of the Baal Shem Tov.
Yeah.
So Baal Shem Tov passed on most of his. Baal Shem Tov passed on most of his teachings, like by word of mouth, to the Maggid. Like some of his teachings are published, but that's not like the main teachings are like in Tanya or whatever. Like this whole second chapter, the whole first chapter of the second part of Tanya is just, they say, is directly from the Baal Shem Tov, and the rest of it is Alter Rebbe's explanation of it. Yeah, I mean it's a debate. It's a debate because the Alter Rebbe says in the second part of Tanya, when he talks about how the world is being created every second, he says, "Oh, the Baal Shem Tov explains like how the world is created every second," but it doesn't say. He starts out with the Baal Shem Tov's explanation. The Baal Shem Tov explains this, but he never says where it ends. So different opinions say like it goes a few chapters later, but I think the consensus is that it ends at the first chapter, and then the rest of the Alter Rebbe's explanation.
Is it not just that one sentence that the world's constantly created?
No, because it's like, how do you know it's being created? From the verses, it says, "Forever, Hashem, your word stands in the heavens," meaning like this is a verse from Psalms, from Tehillim. I think the simple meaning is like when Hashem makes a decree. Somehow, like if in the heavens, meaning like the decree is like I don't exactly know, but something like the heavens is like where the place where like Hashem's decree is, and therefore it's just like it's there. I don't know exactly.
If you want to understand what that means, you got to watch the 2-hour episode.
I don't even know exactly what it means. But somehow the simple meaning is like Hashem makes a decree and the decree is there. Like your word stands in the heavens. Like your word is your word. Like whatever that means. That's the simple meaning. Yeah. But then the Baal Shem Tov, which is really a midrash that the Baal Shem Tov publicized and explained more. But the midrash and the Baal Shem Tov explained that your word actually means the word that you said to create the heavens in the first place. When he said, let there be a heavens, that word is found in the heavens that were created. And then since the word is found in the heavens and Hashem's words are eternal, then the heavens are constantly being created. It's a bit of a stretch.
I pretend I understood.
It's a bit of a stretch. I don't exactly. It's pretty hard to understand the proof. I mean, there's like a whole chapter of the proof. Hashem said, let there be heavens, basically.
But you know what else is going on? There's a meta thing happening here. Whereas instead of trying to prove something based on explaining it, it's proving it from verses. Which is this thing that all these rabbis always do.
Yeah, that's like the main proof, because we know the verses are true, but then how do we know other stuff from that? That's the thing.
I don't know. I don't think you can enter Das that way, as we've spoken about.
Knowledge. Yeah.
Like actually knowing that it's true. Like you're just now building this thing, like we already take it on faith that the Torah is true, and so now I'm connecting it to that, but there's no proof that that's the
But the whole way you know the Torah is true is because the rabbis are telling you it's true, but the rabbis are also telling you that it's being created every second. So it's like the same reason why we trust the rabbis to tell us the Torah is true. We also trust this rabbi to tell us. I mean, when for example, the rabbi tells us something, like he sometimes brings proof, but like people don't believe it because of the proof. They believe it because he said it, and they believe he's like a prophet who knows what he's talking about. But the proof is like in order for that like prophecy to be also understood,
Interesting. I think of connecting it to the verses in the Torah as a way of proving that the Torah has everything in it, and as a way of like replugging the branch back into the tree. Like we say that the
tree.
What? Yeah, so like we say that that the midrashim all come from Moses at Sinai, or more famously, we say that like I think it was Rabbi Akiva that was explaining something, and Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses was listening, and then somebody asked him where he got that interpretation from, and he said, "Oh, we got it from Moses at Sinai," and Moses was happy with that.
Yeah.
So like the rational understanding of what that means is that if you watched our 3 episodes, 2 hours each, long form, intense conversations, you would know.
I don't think we even talked about this.
We didn't talk about going up to Sinai as like a metaphor for climbing up.
Maybe the first episode without
but it wasn't so good.
Maybe. I don't know.
I spoke about it in my half hour earlier.
Brutal.
So basically,
nice.
The Chidah. So if we need to give credit to people that are famously righteous,
if that's a big if,
as opposed to just saying truth as it is, then the Chidah says, and I think the Rambam says, smart people say that when we say that Moshe went up to the mountain, we're not just talking about physically, we're also talking about spiritually, that he climbed the 50 gates of understanding, or that he went up from the material realm to the emotional realm to the intellectual realm.
Interesting.
To the heavens.
Yeah,
so he went
true.
up to heavens.
Meaning during his physical journey, he also went through this spiritual journey.
Well, the question is, and this is an interesting point, my conception of a prophet is a person who climbs to the heavens. And it doesn't matter if they're doing it in the forest, or they're doing it in the shower, or they're doing it in the desert, in the Sinai desert. It doesn't matter where they're doing it. There's this process that they go through in which they enter the heavens, and whether they get to the peak and they access the same level of prophecy as the prophets, or they have a lower level. There's so many levels that a person can attain. Elijah the prophet, when you attain that level, it's one of the levels. All of these are levels that a person takes, and sometimes you go to like a Hasidic neighborhood. That's where the prophets are hiding, by the way. If you want to know where all the prophets are today.
In Crown Heights, probably.
In Crown Heights and in other Hasidic neighborhoods.
Debatably.
And the way to find them are the ones that are like hunched over and not making eye contact with anyone. And they're like praying.
It's debatable. Maybe the ones who are making eye contact with everyone.
Maybe too. Nobody can ever know. But this is my hunch. So if you want to,
your hunch? Is that a hunt? Is that a hint?
My point is that if you want to find these folks, either they don't look religious at all, because they're so upset by the current state of the religious community that they stay on the outskirts. But that means they only reached a low level. Because once you get to the higher level, you can overcome that.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyhow. So Moses went up to the heavens. Oh, so what I want to say is, so the prophet goes up to the heavens. And then they want to tell everyone else, like, hey guys, wake up, you're in a dream. You're living your life day to day. You're just talking about food. You're talking about gossip. You're talking about who did what and arguments and the Hasidim versus the Misnagdim and the news and Trump and Israel and terrorism. You're focused on all the wrong things. So they say, stop doing all that and become like me, and then you'll see God. And not only that, you know that you want to because your parents told you to say all these things during prayer and to believe in the Torah, and the Torah comes from God. So here, let me show you how to do it. So there have been many people that have tried to help awaken the masses, and we call these people saints or rabbis or whatever they are. Not saints, but righteous people.
Modern day saints.
Modern day saints.
No,
Jewish saints.
Yeah, exactly.
Jewish saints. So some of them write books, like you could read these books on it. Some of them, in the ancient times, I think they used to do more physical experiences, because we say, and I think Rabbi Steinsaltz says it in the introduction to the Talmud, but it's also from the Talmud or the Medzhybizh itself, that what's so brilliant about the Torah as it comes down in the Talmud and in mitzvahs is that you have a lofty idea, but the lofty idea has to sort of be caught, because it exists in the vast sea of endless ideas and experiences and whatever it is. There's a famous scientist that said the same thing. He came back with all sorts of science discoveries.
Came back from where?
I'll say.
Okay.
He came back with all sorts of science discoveries, and they go, "Oh, you're so brilliant." He's like, "No, I'm not brilliant. There's a massive ocean, an infinite ocean, where all these ideas come from. And I go with my little fishing net, and I catch a tiny little fish, and I come back to you, and you're so impressed. But there's this infinite ocean. So lahavdil, to separate between material sciences and material knowledge."
What kind of science? Well, okay, we'll go back to this.
What kind of scientist was he?
Where did he go?
Oh, he just means in his mind.
Oh, in his mind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He went off.
Not
to
to the heavens or anything.
No.
Not yet.
The lower heavens.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
So lahavdil, to separate, when a Jewish mystic goes off into the heavens and they find these brilliant, lofty ideas, so then they have to catch them and bring them back. But if you bring them back and you just tell them to someone in a podcast, it's gonna basically disappear.
It's good. No, it's good.
And a podcast is good because it'll live on the internet
forever. Yeah.
Yeah, but in ancient times,
and in their minds,
So it's much better when you take something and then you bring it into physical form, because we learn from God. Everything that God does is how we know how to behave. So God has spiritual ideas and then he brings them into physical forms.
Like the commandments, you mean, or what?
Yeah, really everything around us. Everything around us is rooted in some sort of spiritual source.
Yeah.
Two people talking is the Shekhinah talking, all these sort of things.
Yeah.
So much of Chassidus is explaining that.
Is that what sorcery is, to reveal the source?
Yes, but sorcery. I was just learning. You're saying good words, because I was just learning in Ein Yaakov, which is the Agadata part in Sota, and it has all these It's so fun because you could just open to a random page and it's filled with these little gems. We're talking about sorcery. That sorcery is the people that study Torah, but they don't serve Talmidei Chachamim.
Yeah.
Have you read this?
Yeah.
So he says that it says in there that if you don't, what does it mean to, the commentaries say, if you don't serve the Talmidei Chachamim, you don't actually learn one, how they behave, and the deeper understanding of it.
Yeah.
So it's as if you're a sorcerer.
Yeah, it says that people who do sorcery, they just memorize words and they just say the words over again without understanding it. So sometimes people would just memorize the Mishnah, which is the one part of the Talmud that's not meant to be understood on its own, but they'll just memorize that and they'll think that's the law, but then really the Mishnah needs an explanation of the Mishnah, which is in the Gemara, because the Mishnah on its own can't sometimes we don't follow this Mishnah, really it's another opinion, or sometimes missing words, but it's you can't just follow a Mishnah on its own. So
I feel sometimes we end up doing that nowadays, where people are just repeating lines that they heard and they don't actually understand what they're saying.
That was our job to understand, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
So
we're not criticizing any. Oh, I want to say about Menachem Vitebsk that this week's Parsha, unless I got the Parsha wrong, but this week's Parsha, he talks about the importance of Shalom.
What's this week's Parsha?
Don't test me.
Okay.
Well, last week was Bechukos, no?
Yeah. Last week was Bechukos at the end of the book of Vayikra. Now we're starting a new book of In the Desert.
So I think he skips Bamidbar, unless I couldn't find it.
Interesting.
So what's next week's Parsha?
Naso.
Yeah, so I was reading Naso.
All right.
See, I knew I got the wrong one.
That's good.
But there wasn't a Bamidbar in there.
It's not so bad.
I missed it.
Not so bad.
Not so bad.
Not so.
You're quick with this.
Yeah.
So he talks about Shalom. You know what he says in there? Sivas Hashem Zabracha refers to the way of Aaron, which they call Crown Heights, Sivas Hashem Zabracha.
Here Hashem commanded the blessing, yeah.
Yeah, so it's coming from Aaron, whose way is peace, and it says only through peace Hashem brings blessing, which is also another verse.
Interesting. What verse is that?
Beats me.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure either. That's interesting. Because the last week's parsha mentioned that says when we keep Hashem's commandments, it says it says Hashem will cause, like, no swords will pass through your land, no war, but it says no war will pass through your land. But Rashi says even a sword of peace. I'm pretty sure Rashi says it. Hopefully I'm getting it right. It says, actually, I'm not sure what was it. What was it saying? What was the sword of? What is a sword of? No, the sword. I think one explanation was that even if you won't even see other people fighting, because even seeing war is bad if it's just other people. But I think even a sword of peace is even if they're just like, no, I think a sword of peace is like even if they're passing through your land, but they're not doing war with you. They're like passing through your land to do war with someone else. But that's still like not a good thing to say.
Well, so there was a king, and I'm not an expert in Nach, but there was a king that I think he made a mistake. Like he didn't want, maybe it was Chizkiah? I don't know. He didn't want them to pass through with their troops because he quoted the verse that they're not going to pass through the swords. So they weren't coming to fight, which is how it's usually understood.
But then they did come to fight because of that? No.
I don't remember the exact story.
Interesting.
So we got to study more Nach.
Yeah, no. The prophets. I mean, no, there's Moshe, there's the Rebbe, and what else?
Moshe and the Rebbe. Yeah, I got to study more prophets and Mishnah. I was reading in the introduction, there's an English translation of the Maharal, Gurus Hashem. So it's called The Power of God or something, Divine Power.
Interesting. A book about the Parsha or what?
The Maharal has several Sforim, and he has Gur Aryeh, which is his commentary on the Parsha.
Interesting.
On Chumash. And
Gur Aryeh is the Maharal, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm sure there might be another Gur Aryeh.
No, I think that's the only one.
Yeah. And then he has the different Yom Tovim. And he sometimes he'll like reference them. I'm quoting Rabbi Lapiansky here, so
I know that is.
He's a fantastic Rosh Yeshiva in Maryland, and he has a bunch of recordings online in English, and he goes through Medi's Farm, he goes through the Tanya, he likes to quote the Lav Treva a lot, which is, as a Chabad guy, it's nice to hear. So I have to give credit where credit's due. But he says that he quotes, like, sometimes he'll quote books that he's either written or was planning on writing. So he'll say, like, as I wrote on my book on, well, he has Purim and he has Pesach. Maybe Shavuos he doesn't have. So I'll say, like, as I wrote in my book on Shavuos, that doesn't exist. So anyhow,
plans on writing it?
Yeah, well, he didn't get it. With the Maharal, yeah, I guess he was going to. But
Interesting.
So there's an English translation, fantastic. And the introduction, he's talking about, like, the process of learning. Because it was during the Pilpul movement, or the Neo-Pilpul movement, where people were just, instead of, like, really studying Torah, they were just getting lost in this enjoyment of creating Pilpul. And he was very upset about that. It was also at the same time that they were codifying, like, lots of Shulchan Aruch, and I don't think he was such a fan of that either. Obviously, like, Shulchan Aruch is accepted, but there was, like, some pushback on, like, that's not the way you're supposed to study law.
Harsh.
So he says in there that, like, you should know, like, as a young kid, you should learn all Tanakh, if I'm remembering correctly, and then, like, Mishnayos, you're supposed to, like, those are your pillars, you should know those absolutely. And then when it comes to Gemara, you study it as if it's a commentary on the Mishnah. So it's not that you're studying the Gemara as its own thing. You're studying the Gemara to learn how sages create commentary on the Mishnah, which is very cool. Anyhow, I don't know about everything he was saying, but it's a very good book.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's in that same one that he talks about miracles.
Miracles.
The advantage of a miracle within nature.
Oh, he talks about miracles in nature?
Yeah.
What does he say? What are the different kinds of miracles?
He says that, basically that concept, like, that if there's a miracle that's great, that's outside of nature, and it disrupts nature, it's a
like
lower
what?
Level of a revelation.
What's an example of that?
Splitting of the sea. I mean, to quote the Rebbe.
Yeah.
But anything like the sky parts or anything that, like, shouldn't physically be possible. And if I understood it correctly, I didn't read this inside. I was listening to an audio class. So sometimes, like, you heard things, you process it, but you may have either got a mistranslation or you skipped a part. So the Rabbi Lapiansky said in the audio class, if I understood correctly, that he describes these these miracles that are outside of nature, that break nature, as there being two planes of reality. this still conversational, or are we going to?
That's good. It's good. Yeah.
There's two planes of reality. There's like the
For now.
natural plane of reality where logic works and cause and effect and all these things that we're used to. And then there's another plane of reality where that doesn't apply.
Wait, who said this again?
The
My
Maharal.
attention span. The Maharal said all this?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So he says that when a person experiences a miracle out above nature, so to speak, like with the splitting of the sea, which is not just the Rebbe, he says that, then what's happening is that the people are getting a glimpse at the other reality, the reality that doesn't follow. Although I think there's an exception with the splitting of the sea, but generally speaking, that's how it works. And then he says it's possible that you could have a group of people, and some of them will experience this miracle and some won't, because it's happening in them, like what reality they're being shown.
I have to see the book. I have to see the book inside to really.
Okay, I'll try. That one was in audio, so I'll try
Interesting.
to find the class.
All right, interesting theory. Yeah.
And then he says that when it's revealed in nature, it's a higher one because it's basically showing that God doesn't just have these two realities, and he gives you, like, he's able to expose you to his loftier reality that doesn't follow the rules of nature, but that he's in charge of the one that follows nature as well, and he can control that entirely as well.
Interesting. But just before we go on, what were we even talking about? We're talking about Moshe going up to the mountain, and then now we're talking about like prophets in heavens.
Yeah, I guess.
And then I forgot exactly I forgot exactly how we reached what we're talking about.
Tangents.
It's all good. It's good.
Okay, go. You,
I don't even know.
go,
No, I don't, it's good. I mean, I don't even know what we're talking about, but it's good. It's good. I forgot where we even started. Did we even start? I don't think we've. We're just always we're in an infinite cycle of just starting in the middle. It's good.
I think
it's
the
good.
conversations need to follow like a very strong structure. I think what you're calling
Some
out,
structure. Anything.
I think what you're calling out is not the fact that we've gone on tangents. It's
No, I just
that-
don't remember what we
it's gotten
originally.
too lofty.
I just don't remember the original thing we were talking.
We're talking about the Baal Shem Tov, then we're talking about the Moshiach and the Lev.
How did Moses going up to Mount Sinai fit in? That's what we were like.
Because
talking
every
about.
time we mention something that doesn't make sense, I have to.
What is
stop
it? What
us.
doesn't make sense about Moses going up to Mount Sinai?
You know, we were talking about how we know the Torah is true.
Oh yeah, because we're talking about the world being created every second.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean we know it's true because we know it, but we can explain scientifically how it's true because there's like billions of people who saw Hashem. You don't buy it, you sell it.
The Kuzari argument.
Yeah, I mean, again, like any scientific argument, science is essentially just a way to reach belief. But
Right.
knowledge comes from like actually directly experience it. We know it's true because we're living in it now and we can experience it now. But we could also scientifically explain it because there's millions of people saw Hashem reveal themselves to them and tell them to listen to Moshe. And then since then, there's never been less than hundreds of thousands of people. There's no way to ever like pinpoint a certain time, like, oh, there's only been like one or two Jews. Like, no, there's always been millions of Jews that have always received the tradition. So there's no way. I mean, again,
You're
the way
saying it's impossible for there to be an invented tradition.
yeah, I mean, there's no way you could point in the history and say it was made up here. Like, there's always been millions of Jews, and those Jews heard it from their parents. So you can't like ever say it was made up at a certain point. That's scientifically. Again, we know it's true because we're actually living in it now. That's how we actually know for a fact it's true, because we know ourselves are true. But how we can scientifically also explain it's true is a different issue.
I hear you. It's the Yehuda Levi says it in the Kuzari. The Rebbe quotes it a lot. It's a good argument. I hope this mic can pick it up. It's a good argument, but I don't know. To me, it's not the strongest one. Like this idea that there can't be an invented tradition.
Nope, not with millions of people saying what they heard.
Palestinians have this invented tradition,
No.
and it's only been 70 years, let alone 2000.
They don't have any tradition. No.
They claim that they got it from their parents, that they all got this. I don't want to get into that conflict. I don't want to get there.
Okay, I don't think there's any claim though.
Anyhow,
Seriously.
I'm not arguing for the sake of arguing. I'm just saying that I think that there's a better, like, basically, you need something to make sense in order to free you to then actually experience the thing. Because the whole point is to exit the realm of doubt and to enter into the realm of certainty. And once you're in the realm of certainty, then you can actually experience the thing that you're supposed to be experiencing. Like when the prophet says, the prophet or the saint or the person who comes back to the community and says, like, you guys got this all wrong. What he's basically saying is, like, you're so caught up in the details that you